Good evening. This is Mayor Donald T. Lopez, Village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque. I'm going to be calling to order the Board of Trustees regular meeting. It's October 13th, 2021. The time is 7 p.m. The Village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque will be conducting this live meeting via Zoom video conferencing and streaming on its website and Facebook page. Participants can join telephonically. At this time, I'm going to move to item 2 of our agenda, the roll call. Trustee Rael.
Here.
Trustee Lewis.
Here.
Trustee Pacheco.
Present.
Trustee Riccabini.
Here.
Thank you. I'm going to move to the item 3, which is the approval of the agenda. I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Need a second. Thank you. I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Rael.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Riccabini.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 4 is the public comment period. Participants may address the Board of Trustees to comment on issues, problems, or successes on topics that do not appear elsewhere on the agenda. Submitted written comments that were sent to the clerk prior to the meeting will now be read. Danielle, please read the submitted written comments on behalf of the following.
Mayor, trustees, no written comments were received. However, we do have individuals who have signed up for tonight's list to speak.
Thank you. So basically, we don't have any written comments. I want to remind the governing body, the Board of Trustees, that we now have an appeal pending of ZMA 21-03, a request by Casa Rondeña Winery Real Estate Trust, LLC, for a zone map amendment. I expect this board to hear that appeal in December. Of course, public comment is always welcome and encouraged, but wanted to assure the Board of Trustees and other interested parties that the zoning issue is pending and will be heard timely as contemplated by our ordinances. With that, I will move on to the first commentator. Ms. Camille Varos, please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Stand by while I let Camille in.
Could you hear me now?
Yes.
Good evening, Mayor Lopez and Board of Trustees. I'm Camille Vados. I live at 427 El Paraíso Road, Los Ranchos. And I just want to comment on, it's overwhelming for me and many of the neighbors in my neighborhood and residents in Los Ranchos to have to think of the direction that our village is going towards, with all the short-term rentals, with zone changes from residential or A1 to AC. And it's concerning in that, I feel like I come because I have an interest in my village. Zoom is not the easiest to attend when there is so many critical agenda items facing our village. And I just want to say one, there's many, but I just want to state or ask in reference to the tenants that are in the trailer park and them having to move during a still pandemic when many of them do not have jobs. And I know they received a set amount of money to move, but I think that's going to be a hardship. It is a hardship for them because I watched them throw mattresses and chairs and, I really do have a concern for them and having to move during this time and wanting to know from the board, because I'm told it's your decision as the time frame for them to move during this still pandemic due to COVID, and now during an increase of COVID due to the variants, not just COVID-19. So is there a consideration to request more time for them? Hello?
Ms. Varos, your time is basically up. And I will ask our administrator to contact you and discuss this further. Thank you very much for your comment. Okay?
To discuss this further when?
Very soon, okay? This is not on the agenda and basically your time is up. So I need to move on to the next person, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we have Mr. Jerry Dixon. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the Board of Trustees. My name is Jerry Dixon. I live at 801 El Alhambra Circle here in Los Ranchos. I thank you for the time to speak this evening, and I'm speaking on 2 matters. I'm not going to address the merits of this appeal, which Mr. Mayor just referred to, but I am going to address an issue that has arisen as a result of the appeal. On September 14th, the Planning and Zoning Commissioners heard and I guess have made recommendation or approved the application. Shortly after that, work began, including laying of gravel for a parking lot at 765 Chavez Road, which is the property that's the subject of the application under ZMA 2103, as well as is the subject of the appeal. Parking on that property for patrons of the Casa Rondeña winery commenced as of that time as well as our observation of a number of construction vehicles on the property. On September 30th, we filed the notice of appeal, and under the village zoning ordinance, that acts as an automatic stay of the planning and zoning recommendation or decision, whichever it is. And we've confirmed that with the village attorney as of recently as yesterday. And our understanding is that on October 12th, yesterday, the village advised the applicant that there has been a stay and that the property is not to be used for commercial activity. Both last night as well as tonight. A few minutes ago, I checked over, I counted at least 20 cars visibly that were visible from our house that are parked on the property to utilize or be patrons of the Casa Rondeña winery, which we believe is in violation of the stay. And we ask that the village take action to enforce the stay that has occurred so that the property is not used in commercial manner. The second thing I want to speak on is to, first of all, thank you, each of you, for the time and the effort that was spent in listening to village residents and doing research to follow up on this cannabis issue. We appreciate everything that you all have done in that regard. And in that sense, want to say that we support the zoning ordinance 282. I'm sorry I went over. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dixon. I appreciate your comments. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak that did not register prior to the meeting? If so, please use the raise your hand button.
There is no hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We're going to move on to item 5, presentations. There are none. Item 6 is the consent agenda. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. We have A and B. We have the minutes from August 25 and the minutes from September 8. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move approval of the consent agenda, but I have a correction on A.
Go forward.
On page 11 of 156, there was 3 yes votes and 1 no vote, but on line 235, it shows 3-0. I believe it should be 3-1.
Thank you. Any other corrections for the minutes? I need a second.
I second.
Is there any further discussion from the governing body? Being none, I'm going to call for the question, call for the vote, roll call vote. Trustee Rael,
Yes.
trustee Lewis,
Yes.
trustee Pacheco,
Yes.
trustee Riccobeni.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to item 7, which is departmental reports. I do have a rather sad thing to report to the Board of Trustees and to village residents in my mayor's report, even though I have given everybody a written report. This afternoon, there was a person who passed away at Hartnett Park. It was my understanding that this individual was walking around the park with his spouse, went into the restroom, and I'm not sure if he passed away there or right outside, but I understand the person they were trying to revise this individual. It did not work. And so my sincerest condolences go out to the family of that individual. I do not know who it is, but I will find out. With that, I'm going to move on to the reports. The departmental reports are included in the packet and reflect all activities listed. If the governing body has questions for staff regarding the reports, we'll have each trustee ask all of their questions before we move on to the next trustee. Trustee Rael, it's your turn.
No questions.
Thank you. Trustee Lewis.
My first is not a question, but it's a comment for Administrator Simon. I'd had a question on the improvements to the Agri Nature Center. I got a very nice review with her this week. And I just want to say I'm very impressed with the work that the village staff has done and Joshua has done. And I was very impressed with where it's headed. So I just want to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Lewis. Any further comments?
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Pacheco.
Good evening, Mayor and fellow trustees. I do have some questions. And I'm not sure, Mayor, if this is for you or it should maybe go down to Maria, but with regard to the application for the multi-use trail on Chavez, the fund request of $401,568. Is this the amount that we requested? And would these funds be used just for a study, or how do they apply to the work?
Ms. Rinaldi, are you on the call? Are you on the Zoom meeting right now?
Yes, sir, I am.
Would you please answer that question?
Certainly. Mayor, Trustee Pacheco, that's the amount of funds we're requesting for a total project amount of, I believe, about $470,000. And it is specifically for a right-of-way survey, planning, and design. This is to study the feasibility and to come up with some potential design alternatives based on right-of-way conditions as they exist now and potentially resulting from the right-of-way survey, what area of width along Chavez Road we may or may not have to work with.
Okay.
Does
great.
that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Go ahead, Trustee Pacheco.
Okay, now this would be for Administrator Simon, the Agri Nature Center improvements. You mentioned that the Schulte House is going to be moved. Is that going to be permanently moved, or is it just being moved out of the way for the meantime? What is the status on that?
Oh, thank you, trustee Pacheco, mayor, trustees. We are trying to find a location for the Schulte House. Currently, it sits right in the middle of the access point and new roadway design that we are trying to install. So we will have to move it. It has been up on cinder block for 15 years or more. So it's time to find a permanent home for the facility. And so we are getting cost estimates on what it would take to pour a foundation, fix the roof, fix the windows, shore up the facility to be used, maybe repurposed as a storage shed, etc. We also might consider auctioning the property.
Okay, so right now it's just being moved. We really don't know yet what's going to happen. I mean, there's still possibilities.
Correct. We're still getting quotes and ideas for cost.
Okay, thank you. This one is also for you, and under the business economic development area, you talked about a sidewalk sale. And I heard about this event kind of after the fact. I'm just curious if there's a better way for us to get the word out about these type of events. And I don't know if this one just kind of popped up or if it was something that, you know, that had been in the plans for a while, but it sure would be nice to better advertise these kind of events, and especially around Balloon Fiesta.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question, trustee and mayor and trustees. That event was really thought up at the last moment. We had one business owner ask if we would help her advertise the event, and I thought it would tie in nicely with a series of events that we're trying to establish along our business corridor. As you know, there's certain things that we can do for the business community and certain things we can't. And it was easy to put a notice in our Village Vision magazine, which unfortunately, because of the printing delay this month, didn't come out until the second weekend of the sidewalk sale. But I thought it was a fun event. We had a designer from the Mid-Region Council of Governments give us the little graphic, and we were able to kind of inexpensively help them promote it. But absolutely, we'll try to do better next year.
Awesome, thank you so much. Okay, this is for Joshua. Are you there, Joshua? Yes, I see you. How are you? So it sounds to me like the bike tour did well, not a ton of participation, and I know you have another one coming up. Would we consider moving this to a weekend day as opposed to during the week, or is there a reason that you're doing it during the week?
Thank you, Mayor and Trustee Pacheco, for the question. Yeah, we will start to consider doing things on the weekends. In the past, I know that Fergus had done a bike tour to different farms on a Saturday, and it had gotten quite large, and there was the need to close down streets, and there was over, I think, a couple hundred people in the last time is what he told me. So in an effort to keep it small, that was my original idea of maybe we could do these more frequently and do them on weekdays and see what attendance is like. And if it seems like we need to move to the weekend, then we will. So yeah, in the future, I think we're gonna look at weekends and then maybe just kind of cap it at a certain number so that we avoid shutting down roadways.
Great, thank you. It sounds like it was a lot of fun. Can you also just elaborate a little bit on the local economic development person that came and talked? I mean, what kind of highlight what he spoke about?
Thanks for the question, Mayor Trustee Pacheco. I actually was at a conference up in Farmington, New Mexico during that event, so I wasn't there to hear him. But it was Roy Montalban. He's from Las Vegas, New Mexico. He has a lot of experience in community development. He actually was the co-founder of the Los Angeles Arts Walk, which gets over 40,000 people on a Friday night to attend it. So he has a lot of experience in economic development, and he comes from the approach, I've read some of his materials, he comes from the approach of listening to business owners first, taking time and being a listener, going and talking to each one, and then from that kind of developing an economic development plan, but making sure to not come in with the ideas, but to listen to all the stakeholders first. And he has a lot of experience with that. And so I thought it would be, he's been interested, he's been part of the Agri Futures program and interested in the village, and actually wants to move here in the future to the village of Los Ranchos. So I thought he would be a good person to come and speak on that topic.
Good. Well, maybe we can get him here again sometime in the future.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you, Joshua. Okay, next one is for Director Justice. This is in regard to the short-term rentals. Good evening, Tiffany. Do we know how many owners are operating without permits at this point? Is there any way to kind of find? I know that a lot of people have applied at this point, but I know that there's probably still some out there that have not applied. But do we have any idea of like numbers in terms of those that are not permitted?
So Mayor, trustees, Trustee Pacheco. So the company that we contracted with to identify short-term rentals and their addresses has identified about 25 short-term rentals so far. And I would say 15 are on their way or are already permitted. There's a handful of addresses that they're still narrowing down where exactly they are. They have first looks. They're trying to confirm, with Google Maps, Google Street View, to make sure that they're identifying the correct property. That way we send letters and notify the correct individual. So I would say that there are probably around 10 that have yet to be, I guess, identified and sent a notice.
Okay.
However, I don't know that they are currently active with their listing. The company that we work with also identifies inactive and active listings. So if the place hasn't been rented for several months, or if their calendar is booked out completely as though they're not offering any accommodations, then it drops on their priority list since it's an inactive listing.
Got it. Okay. Thank you so much. Let's see. I guess the next one would be for Fred. Hi, how are you, Fred?
Good evening, trustee.
And I'm not sure that I would do this at this point, but I'm going to ask it, and if we need to talk about it later, that's fine too. But how do we go about requesting additional enforcement by the sheriff's department on Chavez? Is there a way to do that? I mean, can you talk to them? It just seems like that would be a part of the contract with the Village of Los Ranchos, is to kind of direct them, I guess, on those streets that are most important. Just curious from your standpoint.
Trustee Pacheco, Mayor, and trustees, we've been working with the commander from the North Valley on any issues that come up, on Chavez especially. And as a matter of fact, prior to the meeting, I was meeting with the night shift lieutenant. And one of the things that we're asking the residents to do is if they're having issues that are criminal in nature or speeding or whatever, that they need to report it to the sheriff's office whenever it occurs. And then the commanders, when they go to work in the morning or whatever, and they see that they've had, and I'll just use an example, 4 calls on Chavez Road and whatever, then they can assign deputies to that specific area and say, look, see what you can come up with and see what's going on there. Lieutenant Long, he is the night shift commander, and actually he met with a group of the residents from the Chavez area a couple of weeks ago. And we're going to continue those meetings to see what other issues that we can work on together with the sheriff's office and our code enforcement at the same time.
Got it. And what about additional speed signs? I think I only saw one speed sign between Guadalupe Trail and Rio Grande. And it may even been before that, but is there a way to get additional speed signs out there? Speed limit signs?
Yeah, Trustee Pacheco, Mayor and trustees, yeah, we can look at adding some additional signage. We did restripe Chavez. We put some, I think 8-inch stripes on it to narrow the lanes a little bit. That has a traffic calming effect. We're going to be adding some crosswalks there around Guadalupe Trail and a couple other places in there, again, with some signage to slow some things down. We do have one speed board going westbound on Chavez. We have, I believe Keene has ordered 3 or 4 new portable speed boards. So we'll be able to bring some more in those. And then what we do with those is we put them up and then we gather the data from it, and it tells us, and I'll just use this as an example, that we see the majority of the speeders between 7 and 9 in the morning. So then I can direct the sheriff's office to do some of their, what they call directed patrols between 7 and 9 and work on that. One of the things that we've noticed, and I was a little bit overwhelmed of the amount of traffic on Chavez, that there's actually, the last study that was done was about 4,800 vehicles a day, which is a lot of vehicles for that roadway. So I think with the different traffic calming things that we're going to try and do with the striping, the crosswalks and some additional signage, and we'll put some additional speed limit signs up. I think we can help minimize that. And then of course, the thing is on the trail system, if they can get that done, that will definitely help do some things also. So I think there's a lot of things in the works. It just may take a little while to get all that done.
Great. I appreciate all that information. Mayor, I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Riccabini.
No questions, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Item 8 is financial business. Discussion and approval of the cash report. I have to advise the governing body that we authorized vacation for Tammy Silva quite some time ago, so she will be gone on vacation for the rest of the month, but working, as necessary to accomplish all of the tasks that she has to do as our CFO. We got a call from Treasurer Will Fisher shortly before the meeting started that he had an emergency. So what I would like to do is either myself or Administrator Ann Simon can perhaps answer any questions the governing body might have about the cash report. And I also want to tell the governing body that if you have specific questions, we can write them down and get the answer for you as soon as possible from either Will Fisher or Tammy Silva via email. So let's move forward. I need a motion to approve the cash report.
I move approval of the cash report, and then I do have some questions.
Of course, I need a second.
Second.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to open it for discussion from the governing body. Let me know what your questions are. We're going to start with Trustee Rael.
Okay, on page 45, which is the summary, they listed a payment of $10,000 to a Mr. Gutierrez. They just misspelled the first name. It should be, they transposed the A and the R, so it's just a correction.
Okay.
But then on page 82 and 83 on the check register, you want to go into that now or you want to wait?
Yes, no. Ask all of your questions, Trustee Rael.
I'm on page 83, or rather 82 first. There are some payments to City of Albuquerque for air quality program. What is that about?
Administrator Simon, would you know the answer to that?
Hi, Hi, Mayor, Trustee Rael. I might need to call on Director Justice, who handles our hazardous materials and our transfer payment to the city, but it's my understanding that it's our share of the airshed, the larger regional airshed program that we budget for every year and participate in annually.
Okay. Another question on page 83. There's some payments to the MRGCD for distribution of surface water. What is that about?
Trustee Rael, I sign those checks and I read the description of what we do. We do have to pay for distribution of surface water to MRGCD, and we've been doing that for a long time. That's about the best answer I can give you. I can provide you with a lot more detail if necessary.
Is that kind of like a, so I don't remember ever seeing it before.
Oh, no, it's been there for a long time, ever
Okay.
since I've been mayor.
Okay. Also on page 83, there's payments to PNM and a payment of 5436 for 319 Osuna, which is fine, but then it has a total of $3,649.75, which does not compute, I guess. It's just, it looks like something's missing there, or they did something wrong, because to go from $54 to $3,600.
Administrator Simon, do you think you might be able to answer that? I know I see those checks and I see the backup every month.
Mayor, Trustee Rael, I'm going to have to look into that. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. I just think that that needs to be corrected. Something is off there. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Trustee Lewis.
I have a couple questions. Let me see if I can find them here. My first question is on page 52 under the general fund, planning and zoning. There's a budget of $12,815 for full-time wages, but we're only showing $1,278 for the month. Is there an error there or is something missing?
Administrator Simon, I don't know if Tiffany needs to try to answer that or not.
Mayor, Trustee Lewis, I can let you know that I have noted it and I've sent an email to Tammy and I've sent a text to Will and I cannot explain it. So we're going to have to dig a little bit. So
Okay.
apologies.
Thank you. On page 55, it seems to be in several of the different departments, but under maintenance, building and structure, and grounds and road work. Under grounds and road work, we have a budget for the month of $11,750, and we spent $141. But then for the year, we're already at 54% of our budget. And for buildings and structures, we're already at almost 39% of our budget. And I was just curious if it's just a timing issue or what's going on in that department.
Administrator Simon?
Mayor and Trustee Lewis, I am going to be following up with staff and I will get you a full report.
Okay, thank you. Let me look. I think Pablo asked a couple of the questions on the check register, so I have no more questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Pacheco.
Thank you, Mayor. I had some of the same questions as Trustee Lewis had. I just wanted to make a comment, if I could, with regard to our financial situation in the village. We're sitting in a pretty fiscal positive place in the village. And we're doing great. I think, you know, we're healthy, all of that. But I hope that our residents understand that, you know, a big part of this is obligated money for things to run the village. But I also feel like we need to look for, and I know we are, and it's our duty as trustees to look for opportunities to increase our cash reserves. And, you know, I keep thinking of ways that we can do that. And I know that the village staff works really hard on this, but, you know, one way and an important way, of course, is to increase our community's GRT. And the way that we do that is by welcoming businesses to our community. And I just, you know, wanted to put that out there so that the residents understand how important the GRT is to the village of Los Ranchos. And again, it's our responsibility as trustees to support those companies that are going to come in, or those businesses that are going to open up here in the village of Los Ranchos. And I also just want to make mention, since the holidays are coming up soon, I encourage all the residents to obviously shop local. You know, that plays a big part in our GRT and the support of our community. And I just, you know, want to encourage everybody to continue to support our local businesses, which in turn really helps us. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Trustee Riccabini.
Thank you, Mayor, and well said, Ms. Pacheco. I think you're right on target with that, and we've worked really hard, and staff has worked really hard to not only watch our expenses, but also to provide top services. So I commend the village on that, and you, Mayor. We are sitting in a nice cash position, and we want to certainly keep it that way, but that can go away real quick if we don't get the gross receipts coming in. So agree 100%. And I have no other further questions other than those have been already asked. Thank you.
Thank you. So at this time, I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Rael.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Riccabini.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 9 is public hearings. There are none. Item 10 is old business. A, Mr. Chad Reniker from Palindrome Communities Village Center update. Mr. Reniker, I presume that you're on.
Mayor and trustees, Mr. Reniger will be on the phone, and his staff member Weston Glass will be presenting the images about Village Center tonight.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and trustees. Looks like Chad is still muted. Oh, there you go.
Am I there? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Chad.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Sorry about that. I'm at the mercy of travel gods today, so I'm sorry that I'm not there on camera. But thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to give you an update on the Village Center project. I want to start by kind of bringing everyone up to date where we were the last time I presented and where we are today on our financing, because I know that a lot of people heard that we didn't receive our tax credit allocation from the MFA, and that's sort of true, but it doesn't mean that the project's not moving forward. So I wanted to explain that briefly. As you may or may not remember, we had applied specifically for the competitive 9% tax credits in earlier this year, and it was specifically for the 60 units that were in the northeast corner of the project that we were designating for our senior housing, and it did not include the financing for the balance of the apartment units that we're planning to develop. We scored high enough in our application to be funded, but we were not awarded the credits due to a financial feasibility technicality that I disagreed with and still disagree with. We did appeal that decision to the MFA board, and were not successful in our appeal. So we weren't given the credits the 9% credits. And so as I have explained, our backup plan was always that we would finance the apartments with tax exempt bond financing and non-competitive 4% tax credits, which is as soon as we didn't, it was confirmed weren't going to get the credits, we immediately went to that structure, and that's what we've been working on since. What that means is instead of two separate multifamily projects, it'll all be one, and it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 units combined. We will be making application to Bernalillo County to be the bond issuer to issue the tax exempt debt. We got delayed slightly over some site work and civil issues in the last 30 days, which postponed us somewhat. We were planning to be in for their November meeting at the county, but it looks like now the earliest that we can get in would be on their December 11th meeting, and they'll hear the application and presumably approve it, and then it'll go on to the State Board of Finance for issuance of. The good thing about this financing is that it's not competitive. The tax credits are automatically allocated to the project so long as we meet the minimum threshold requirements of MFA's uncertainty about getting that financing. So I wanted to make sure that everyone knew that the project's still alive and well and moving forward, and nothing's really changed. It's just going to be a different type of subsidized financing that's on the apartments. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Weston to step you through the updated slides so that we can show you where we're at conceptually with the project.
Hi, everybody. Administrator Simon, I sent you some images earlier this week. I was actually able to get some more images from the architects that I could share if that's okay. Might be a little more information.
Sure thing, go ahead.
Okay, why don't we start here with the site plan? This is the master plan for the whole site. This is where we are right now. Up here, you see Osuna Road. Over here is 4th. North is up on this map. So the 200 plus units that Chad was just referring to will be in these 3 buildings on the north half of the site, which we are calling parcels 1, 2, and 3. The original 9% tax credit application he was referring to is just here, parcel 3. But now we're going in for that 4% application for parcels 1, 2, and 3 all together as one project. And these will all be affordable. Parcel 4 is going to be the agritourism hotel / brewery / food pods. This is really the heart of the project, and the part that we're really excited about. There's an amphitheater here and garden beds and demonstration farm. Then sites 5 and 6 are going to happen later on down the road. Site 5 will be more housing, and site 6 right now, we're talking about a grocery store, but that's likely to be later on, and we don't have anything solid on that yet. And then this blue rectangle you see here is the existing dance studio who are going to stay. And they're going to just sort of become part of this village center. So I have a few images to show you. Why don't we start with sites 1 and 2, these apartment buildings. We're going to be right here. We're looking at the corner of 4th and Osuna. And this is just one idea we've come up with. What we know is that we want to have something iconic and a landmark for the village and for visitors to see, to photograph, to know that to know where they are and to know that they are in the heart of the village. And so right now, this is one of the ideas that we're talking about with the architects, this water tower, agricultural visual language. The corner is definitely going to be very important. We want to make sure the landscaping is really great and signature, and that it's an active corner. So looking at this image on the left here, you see housing on the right. You've got housing on the top 2 floors. The ground floor all along 4th Street will be micro retail shops. And if you've seen the palindrome projects over on Central, Elvado, the Elvado Motel, as well as Elvado Place next door, that's a pretty good example of the type of really small retail spaces that we have found to be really popular and really successful in Albuquerque. So that's the idea for over here. Let's move to the next image. Sorry, it's a little slow. This is an image of the parking lot between buildings 1 and 2. And this is resident parking. The idea is we use landscaping and site elements to really make this place have a real sense of place and a place where you want to be and want to spend time. One idea we've come up with here for this central median in the parking area would be growing hops all along either side. That's what you're seeing here. And also just, native landscaping and permeable paving where we are able to use it to help with stormwater, infiltration. Here's another view of that same. We're looking towards towards 4th. Osuna's to our right. So building 1 is there, and this is that same central parking median with the hops growing on either side. We've got some lighting, just an idea, a way to make it a really nice place to be. This is another view of that same area in between those 2 buildings. We've got a windmill here. That's an idea we've come up with. Again, we're working with an agricultural language. And here's another view of the corner with that same. This is something our architects came up with. The idea of taking the compuertas in the acequias and turning them into a large element that's actually something that people walk through. This is just one idea they've come up with. Let's see. This would be in building 2. There's a playground area, and it's just kind of an idea. Right now the architects are just showing this as some boulders the kids would play on, but that's not necessarily what it would be. But the idea is we incorporate native and natural landscaping into the play area. And we've got hops growing over here on the side of the building. And the apartments upstairs will have balconies that look down into this central courtyard. And circulation, these are circulation pathways that also look down into the courtyard. So everybody that lives there gets a real sense of community and a sense of place, and they're connected to each other and to the life going on in between the buildings. Here's a view of the entry from, so we're on 4th and we're turning right. On the right side of the image, we're turning right, we're northbound on 4th and we're turning right into the project. So building 1 is here and building 2 is over here. And this again is that language of the compuerta that the architects came up with. And we've got the micro retail shops here along the 4th Street front with apartments upstairs. The idea is this heavy awning here really gives the building a more urban feel where you've got an overhang and you've got landscaping and it's a nice place to walk up and down and browse the shops. Moving on. This is one idea for the entry to one of those buildings. We were kind of working with the language of a large grain silo here. And just like, this is a good example of the landscaping and the way that the whole site is tied together with pedestrian pathways and crosswalks, and there's different corrugated metal, stucco, metal awnings, and different materials that sort of bring together the whole concept. This would be another view of that same area we were looking at 2 slides ago. This is the bus stop right here in the middle on 4th. And these are all the shops. And this is the entrance to the site. This would be one of 3 entrances to the site.
So Weston,
Uh-huh.
sorry, Dan, I got a delay here, but I know Trustee Pacheco had mentioned in her report the gross receipts tax and encouraging businesses, and that's something that we're very excited about and proud on this project is this micro retail and micro restaurants that Weston will be talking about later. But can you, Weston, I know that we've kind of done a lot of work on that retail that's on 4th and really shrunk a lot of that retail space, or we divided it, I guess, into a lot of smaller spaces. And approximately how many spaces are we envisioning to be along 4th there now, small businesses?
What we're showing right now is about 16 or 17 small spaces, each one being around 800 square feet, and each one having its own entrance onto 4th and its own awning. And they all share a bank of restrooms and a common lobby that would be kind of right here behind the bus stop. You can't really see it in this image, but that's where it would be. And we have found that these smaller retail spaces do really well.
Yeah, really. I mean, this is the model we want to do in all of our projects going forward. They've been so successful at places like El Vado and the Sawmill Village. You know, we actually have waiting lists for this, so I think it's going to be really robust.
I'll move
So
on now.
Weston and Chad,
yeah,
this is
sorry.
the mayor. How long did you want to make this presentation? I mean, you have as much time as you need, actually.
But Weston, I was going to say, sorry for the delay, Weston. I think the trustees are kind of familiar in general with the concept, but maybe we go to phase 4 and talk about the hotel, because that's, at least in my opinion, one of the most exciting things. And unfortunately, our drawings aren't as developed yet, but I think maybe we can talk through all the elements there that we're putting in place.
Please do. Please do.
Certainly. Yeah, I'm sorry we don't have such beautiful images for phase 4 as we do for 1, 2, and 3, but I'll show you what we have and we can certainly talk about it. And it is a really exciting part. So we'll start here with this. Oh, what have I done? Let me get back to that sheet. This is the site plan for that. And we're showing the building here. This is the white in the middle. And then over here on the green and brown areas, you've got demonstration farm, raised planter beds, amphitheater, a picnic area, another landscaped village square area. The building itself, we have a tap room wine bar here at the north end. This layout is under development, but this is generally the idea. In the middle, we've got a really big, beautiful 3-story high barn space. And we're envisioning all of these little food pods here and these incubator spaces, these small retail spaces, the event center, the Brewers Guild, they all open into this central atrium space that also will have maybe a cart here selling soaps, or little nodules of activity in there. And this is really the hub of activity on the whole site. And this conference event center here can open up to both sides. And you could imagine a wedding happening here where you've got the party happening indoors here, and then the ceremony actually happens here at the auditorium, and people are taking photographs on the farm area. I'd like to point out the acequia where we've got, this is right here. It's not shown on this drawing, but this is where the Chamizal lateral runs. So the plan is in the replat, we want to make sure that all the existing water rights go to site 4, and we will connect this acequia here, and it'll be a year-round water feature that runs in 2 directions here on the site, which will be used for irrigation but also as an amenity for hotel guests and visitors to the site. So down here, we've got a workshop, yard, and we're picturing a blacksmith or a leather worker or something like that in these workshop areas. I can show you what we've got for images of the building itself. This is one. Sorry, it's getting a little. There we go. So this is an idea from our architect. This is where they're working on. This would be the 3-story atrium space in the middle, running down the center. All of the program I just described here on the ground floor. They're showing board formed concrete for the ground floor. And then upstairs, you've got hotel guest rooms that step back with balconies so that hotel guests staying there can overlook the farm area and overlook the site. All these spaces have big overhead doors that roll up to open wide to the outdoors. And where you see a projection from the building here, the architect, Rupal engineer, she came up with a great idea here for these. These are being special suites that have a bathtub. They're sort of like the honeymoon suite. You've got a king size bed in there, and then you've got a bathtub right out here by the windows that you can take a bath with locally produced soaps and look out over the farm. Here's one more view of that building. This would be from the other end with the main entry. This is a big overhang where cars can pull up and people can get dropped off. And you can see the same. This is the side that faces towards 4th Street. And we've got tables and chairs out here, seating. We've got the big central area and the guest rooms on 2nd and 3rd floors. I wish I had more to show you on this right now, but it is under development and we are very excited about it.
I think the main thing there, Weston, that we really want to convey to the audience is, you know, it's really intended to look like a large barn with the 3 levels. And again, we really want to celebrate the agricultural heritage and it will thematically, you know, that will be the theme of all of our guests. Our guests that come to stay here won't be traditional motel or hotel guests. They're going to be people that are going to come to kind of experience that agritourism experience. So I want to make sure we give people opportunity to ask any questions, and we hopefully we could talk for a long time, but if there are questions, we'd love to.
So Chad,
address them.
let me intervene. This is Mayor Lopez. What I would like to do, I do have one question for you to start, and then I'm going to ask the trustees if they want to ask a question or more. Were you going to present a lot of this at a public meeting or some kind of charrette? What is your strategy in regards to that?
Well, we hadn't planned to do a formal public hearing. I don't think one is required.
That's correct.
In any project that we do, that we reach out to the neighborhood associations and make sure that they're aware of who their new neighbor is going to be and that we're welcomed as part of that. And so that's certainly a plan that I have to do between now and when we actually make application.
Okay, very good. Do the trustees have questions at all? I'd like to go trustee by trustee. Trustee Rael, do you need to recuse yourself on this matter?
Yes.
Okay. Trustee Lewis, do you have anything that you would like to ask Chad or Weston?
Sure, Chad, I was just curious what kind of timetable you're looking at this point. Knowing how development works, it's subject to all sorts of different things, but what's your timetable for phases 1, 2, 3, and 4 at this time?
Yeah, well, nothing ever goes wrong, so you can just take this schedule to the bank. So, you know, the financing, our architectural work is in good shape, and I don't think that's going to be what the critical path is. It's really going to be, I think, our financing. And so, as I described earlier, assuming we can get our civil issues resolved and get our costs for the project revised, we plan to make application, I think it's the 22nd of November, to Bernalillo County, and then we'll be heard at their December 14th meeting. And assuming that goes well, we would expect to receive our bonds in January. And then it's really just a matter of getting them closed. And so I would say it should take us 90 days after that. So I had planned to start construction by the end of March, and that may bump 30 days, but we're generally still on track for that time frame for the spring. Now that's for primarily what is phase 1, 2, and 3. Phase 4 isn't as far along, and it's architectural, but since we're not applying for public funding on that, we're funding that with private funds, we won't have the delays. We won't have to go through the necessary steps on the financing side there. But our goal is to do phase 1, 2, 3, and 4 construction at the same time.
Thank you.
And really the site work for all 6 phases, we really would like to do the site work for at the same time as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, Trustee Pacheco, do you have a question or more?
I do. First, I want to say thank you, Chad and Weston, for the nice report or presentation. My question is with regard to phase 3, and I know that you said that you're kind of putting all of those in together. Is that third phase still senior housing, or has that changed?
It is. I want to explain this as clearly as I can because it's a little complicated. The MFA has different set-asides that you can elect. One is a senior set-aside, and that would require everyone to be 55 and over. And the other is family, which does not have that requirement, but it has other requirements. For example, a certain number of 3-bedroom units or a certain number of 2-bedroom, 2-bath units to accommodate families and a playground. So we are actually going to be applying for it under the family set-aside. So from a technical standpoint, anybody can live. You don't have to be 55 and over to live at any of the units. However, we have not changed the design of the building that's in phase 3. So it's still really designed around senior living. And we expect that that's primarily who will want to live in that building.
Okay. Trustee Pacheco, any further discussion?
That's all I have for now. Thank you for that explanation.
Okay. Trustee
Sure.
Riccabini, any question?
Yes, thank you. And Chad, thank you very much for a great presentation, and appreciate it. And Weston, Chad, you mentioned in your comments that you're going to start 1, 2, 3, and 4. Did you say construction, or are we only going to start doing the site work for 4?
No, we want to do the site work for the entire project, all 6 sites. And
Okay.
when I say site work, I mean that encapsulates a lot of stuff. What I mean by that specifically is we want to do all of the underground utility work, all of the storm drain work. We want to do the drive aisles, the curbs, the gutters, and when it's all done, we would expect to have phase 6 and phase 5 as pads ready for construction at a later date. Once the site work's done on the entire site, we would proceed with construction of the buildings on phase 1, 2, 3, and 4.
So
Each one of these phases will be separately, that we'll be replatting the entire site, so there will actually be 6 different tax lots, and there will be separate ownership. Phase 1, 2, and 3 will be owned by a limited partnership, and phase 4 will have a separate owner as well, separate financing. But timing wise, we'd be using the same construction company, us, And so we'd like to build at the same time for economies of scale.
So basically the roadways and the parking and whatnot, the curb and gutter will go in on the entire site.
Yes, that's what we're planning to do. We don't have pricing on that, but that makes so much more sense for us from a cost standpoint.
And Chad, I am just so grateful for you for that piece. I think that's important instead of a blank, dusty field. So appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, and that's one of the, if you look at phase 4, you know, when I can't see the screen, but Weston, when you put that up there, phase 4 has a very odd looking shape to it now. You know, part of it extends over to the lateral, part of it extends at the bottom all the way over to 4th Street. And the reason for that is for this thing we're talking about right now. We want to be able to do all of that site work and have it be part of phase 4 so that we can include that work as part of the financing that we do when we develop phase 4. So that's the main explanation as to why phase 4 looks like such a strange tax lot.
Well, I sure appreciate it because it shows a intent of progress. So I appreciate that. A quick question on just something that came to my mind when Weston, you talked about a shared bathroom area for the retailers. Would that be a commercial for the retailers, or would that be a public restroom?
Well, it's shared for the retail, but we would have a lobby that you could access, you know, that if it became a problem, we could lock the lobby so that people needed to get a code or a key from a retailer to use it. I mean, I don't know. We run into that in Portland a lot with public restrooms becoming a liability. But the idea is that, you know, people will just behave.
Okay.
Los Ranchos.
But Trustee Riccobeni, any further questions?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to close the presentation. I want to publicly thank Mr. Renneker and Weston for a wonderful presentation. We look forward to the project. I want to move on to
Thank
item
you.
11,
Yep.
which is announcements. 11A is the 2021 regular local election information. Clerk Danielle Cedillo Molina, please make that presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and trustees, in your packet are locations with their respective times for early voting along with election day voting convenience centers. Just wanted to let you know that there will be 20 early voting sites throughout Bernalillo County, with one site located in the village at Los Ranchos Villa. Early voting begins on Saturday, October 16th and runs through Saturday, October 30th. New Mexico law now provides the opportunity for same-day registration, allowing people to register to vote or update their voter registration immediately before voting in a statewide election during the early voting period. There will be 72 election day voting convenience centers available throughout the county, with 2 located in the village. Again, Los Ranchos Villa and Taylor Middle School, and 1 situated nearby at Valley High School, located at 1505 Candelaria Road Northwest. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Election Day, Tuesday, November 2nd. And if you need more information, please visit the election page of the village website for all these voting locations and times. So with that, Mayor, I'm turning it over back to you. Thank you.
I appreciate it, Danielle. Item 12 is new business. 12A is discussion and approval to adopt ordinance number 282. An
Mayor,
ordinance- Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Lewis,
can we take a 2-minute break before we start on this? issue?
Absolutely. It's 8:09. Let's reconvene at 8:12, 12 minutes after 8.
Great, thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Kiko. It is 8:12, and for the record, I want to state that the governing body of the Village of Los Ranchos took a 3-minute break. The time is 8:12. We will reconvene the meeting at this time. Item 12A is discussion and approval to adopt ordinance number 282, and ordinance repealing ordinance number 273, regulating the growth, sale, and production of recreational cannabis and cannabis products pursuant to the Cannabis Regulation Act of 2021. Director Tiffany Justice.
Mayor, trustees, this is option number 2 that you all saw last Wednesday at the special meeting. I will go over specifically the changes to that option 2, and then I will go through the entire ordinance. Per some trustees' comments, we've added the definition of homegrown or homemade cannabis from the Cannabis Regulation Act, added a line in the exception for homegrown or homemade cannabis to include the word homemade. And we've also prohibited consumption areas in commercial and mixed use zones. So going back to the ordinance from the top, the first section, the definitions have been changed to be in reference to the Cannabis Regulation Act instead of the Linen, Air, and Compassionate Use Act, since the Linen, Air, and Compassionate Use Act specifically refers to medical cannabis, not recreational cannabis that was adopted this year. So all those definitions have changed, and also some of them have been removed. Personal production of cannabis and Linen, Air, and Compassionate Use Act. And as I mentioned last week, the removal of hemp from this exception as well. This prohibition as well. So section 2 is specifically for our residential zones. This section is just A1, our A1 zone. We have several other residential zones, A2, A3, R2, and R3. However, they refer back to A1 for what is permissive and conditional for their uses. So the only change is in A1, but this would apply to all residential zones in Los Ranchos. With this, the sale or distribution of cannabis or cannabis products is still prohibited. This is something consistent and carried over from Ordinance 273 that was adopted this March. And then also the cultivation of cannabis is also still prohibited, with the exception, instead of being for personal production, now changed to homegrown or homemade cannabis. As mentioned at last week's informational special meeting, personal production, homegrown, homemade cannabis, that is limited to 6 plants per person or 12 plants per household, and does not require a state license to operate. Larger scale operations would require the state license. And the Cannabis Regulation Act did say that specifically that we cannot prohibit homegrown cannabis for personal production. The other thing that has been added to this is that this is specific to cannabis, but this would also apply for any other state license that this falls under, where if the agricultural activity requires a state license and that license requires proof of water availability, we would like a copy of that as well. In section 3, it goes over cannabis in commercial zones. Ordinance 273 prohibited cannabis except for sale and service, so technically cultivation areas, and this consumption areas. So this prohibited cultivation and manufacture, but it did allow retail sale and consumption because that wasn't factored in at that time. This has been changed to say that in general, for all cannabis license types or uses, the facility should not be located within 300 feet of a school or daycare. This is applicable and for any of these facilities. And I believe that state courts have ruled that that 300-foot line is from property to property, not necessarily door to door. So that is what would be applied in this case. Cultivation and manufacturing, should either of those activities occur in structures, those structures shall be equipped with an activated carbon HVAC air filtration system to abate odor emissions. Cultivation and retail sale are noted as being permissive. consumption areas as prohibited and manufacturing as a conditional use. Retail sale is prohibited between midnight and 8 a.m., which is consistent with our rules for alcohol sale. And actually slightly more restrictive, we allow our alcohol sales to be conditional between midnight and 2 a.m. So this is slightly more restrictive than that. And then because facilities can get multiple license types, should there be any combination of which that involves manufacture because it's conditional use, that now will be a conditional use as well, since it involves manufacture. If it doesn't involve manufacture, it's just cultivation or retail sale, then it would also be permissive. The Village Center Zone, Section 4, that has been updated consistent with Section 3 for C1 retail commercial zone. We also specifically say for the VC zone that agriculture in general is limited to an area not to exceed 10% of the area of the permissive use it supports. And so we've carried that language over specifically for cannabis cultivation as well. And then AC Section 5, AC agricultural commercial zone, the permissive uses are consistent with what's allowed in the A1 zone. So that specific section for commercial activities associated with horticulture, that also prohibits cannabis or cannabis products because only residential zones are eligible to apply for the, A1 agricultural residential zones are eligible to apply for this zone. The uses are consistent with what we allow for agriculture in our A1 residential zones. And I stand for any questions.
Tiffany, before we get to questions, I want to ask for a motion and a second, and then we'll get to the discussion from governing body and questions. But I would like to ask Attorney Nan Winter. Nan, do you have anything further to add to Tiffany Justice's presentation?
Mayor, no, I think Tiffany took what has already been presented, and then I think listened to the comments of the board at our special meeting and has now incorporated some of those elements into this particular draft. Am I stating that correctly, Tiffany?
Yes.
Okay, so I do see elements of board comment in here. And I think I have nothing to add to that.
Thank you very much, Nan Winter. Okay, before we get to the questions and discussion from the governing body, and then after that, anything from the general public, I need a motion.
Mayor, can I just ask a question?
Of course you can.
So if
Under
we make a-
Robert's rules, typically we need a motion and a second, then we get to discussion, but I will allow it.
Okay, so if I make a motion to approve, but I still want some conditions or discussion of some conditions to be
Then you
added
can
to that.
amend the motion.
Okay. So I will go ahead and move to approve ordinance number 382.
282.
I'm sorry?
282.
282. And this would repeal ordinance number 273.
Thank you. I need a second.
To get to the discussion, I will second it.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I'm going to go trustee by trustee with questions and discussion. Trustee Rael.
Tiffany, I have a question regarding A2 and A3. How many homes are allowed in zones A2 and A3?
Trustee Real, Mayor, trustees, zones A2 and A3 are one house per every 2 acres and one house per every 3 acres.
Okay, that's what I thought. But when you say that those all refer back to A1, but in the on page 100 under section 2 in parentheses, you say 1 residential unit, 1 acre. Shouldn't that be stricken or changed somehow to, because the other zones do not allow 1 unit per acre?
Right. So Trustee Real, Mayor, trustees, what I referenced earlier is that in the A2 and A3 sections of the code, under their section on permissive uses, it says any permissive use, I'm paraphrasing here, but any permissive use that is allowed in the A1 zone, or any conditional use that is allowed in the A1 zone. So in those sections of the code already is language referring back to the A1 permissive and conditional uses. So by just changing the A1 permissive and conditional uses, we change it for all of the residential zones. So we don't need to change each zone individually, just this one section.
Yeah, I understand it, but
And this is the A1 agricultural residential zone, which is 1 house per 1 acre.
and that doesn't affect A2 and A3? When you say 1 house or 1 residential unit per acre?
So there's 5 different residential zones in Los Ranchos. 3 of
Yeah.
them are A1, A2, and A3. All of the residential zones refer back to the A1 section of our code for more detail on the permissive and conditional uses. So we only have to change the A1 agricultural residential zone. This doesn't change the units per acre for any of the other zones. This only changes what is permissive or conditional or prohibited for those zones. And so no amendment is necessary to those other zones. And no additional amendment is necessary for the A1 section, just regarding the dwellings per acre.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Lewis.
Good evening, Tiffany. My first question is on page 101. I want to make sure I understand clearly the 10% of the area of the permissive use it supports. Can you explain that limited area a little bit more to me?
Yes, so Trustee Lewis, Mayor, Trustees, if you look further up on page 101 under the agricultural table, the sentence there has limited to an area not to exceed 10% of the area of the permissive use it supports and not to include livestock. So in general, in the BC zone, agricultural uses are allowed as an ancillary use in support of an on-site permissive use. And so with that, it's limited to 10% of the area of the permissive uses supports. So an example of that could be, I guess, a bakery or a restaurant that operates and it has agriculture as a component to support it. But agriculture is limited not to exceed 10% of the area of the permissive use it supports. So it can have a small garden, but the majority of the property could not be a farm, and then there'd be a small restaurant.
So if the
Specifically in the BC zone.
Okay, so if the bakery's 2,000 square feet, then they could have a 200 square foot garden. Am I
Yes.
understanding correctly? Okay.
Yes, and then that similar application would be applied for a cannabis grow facility. If somebody was to sell cannabis, they could have that, 1,000 square foot or 2,000 square foot structure, and then for the sale, but then the smaller component of it would have to be the cultivation.
Okay, thank you. My next comment is sort of for my fellow trustees. I found the other night, it was very informative to me, and I learned a whole lot from our meeting the other night. And I feel like there's still some research to be done on maybe some more limitations that can be put on. One of the ones that I feel like we could do is certainly shorten the hours of operation. I don't think we have to follow what the alcohol ordinances are. But I'm not sure if it's better to, I mean, in support of, getting something in place of 273. I don't know if it needs to be tonight or next month, I feel like we could either tonight pass 282 with the intention of next month or in December, adding some amendments as we come to understand more of the different kind of limitations that we can put on as a community. Or do we defer this thing to next month and everybody get together and add any limitations they would like to see? And so I'm just curious, the feeling of the other trustees on that.
Well, let's start with Trustee Rael, because you are asking a great question. Trustee Rael, what's your opinion?
Well, my opinion is we do not have to settle this tonight. I think we have an ordinance. And if someone applies for a license, it's going to take them probably 90 days to get it through. And by that time, we would have a different ordinance. And the ordinance that we have now is already prohibiting the growth of it. So the only way they could change it would be to go to court, and they wouldn't be going to court if we were going to change it.
Trustee Pacheco, do you have an opinion?
So if we're going to talk about additional conditions to add to this ordinance, could those conditions be added tonight, or would we need to have discussion on that or more discussion on that?
So let me move to Trustee Riccobene. What do you think about this issue?
I am absolutely not in a rush to approve it. When we had our discussion last week, I believe it was, I found it difficult to understand state law versus what we've got in what we had in number 2. Okay, so does state law require? I'm not sure. I mean, I'll just ask a question: is state law requiring the agricultural paragraph that you've got under Village Center Zone?
So, Director Justice, do you want to answer that?
Yes, so Trustee Riccobene, Mayor, trustees, that agricultural paragraph is not required by state law in the VC zone. That is something, so just to clarify, so you see blue underline sections, that's what's being added. The red strike through is what's being deleted from our current ordinances in place. The black is what is currently on the books and is not being changed. And just for reference, this agricultural paragraph that I referenced was not touched with the, I guess, cannabis ordinance. This existed prior to that.
So Trustee Lewis, I think you have heard from the other trustees.
I'm a mayor, just
Sure, go right ahead, Trustee Riccobene.
And then when we get us in the blue area, the cannabis blows, are we required by state law to have the retailers offering cannabis?
So Trustee Riccobene, Mayor,
To allow.
trustees, were required to not completely prohibit a licensee. So I guess so the interpretation of that is that we have to allow all of the license types that exist in some capacity. But what completely prohibit means, I believe, remains to be seen. Whether or not we could prohibit retail completely, I believe that we would not be able to do that with state law the way it is. And Attorney Winter, please correct me if I'm wrong.
Mayor, trustees, I think Tiffany's right. Law provides that you cannot prohibit any licensee in its entirety. What you could do with respect to, I mean, you've got, you've really protected the residential zones in this particular draft, and you've allowed most licensees and most use in the retail commercial zone. And then you've got again, quite a bit of use and licensee activity in the village center zone. Some jurisdictions are limiting all cannabis activity to the retail commercial zone. So you could not allow it in the village center zone. I would remind you that the development agreement with Palindrome precludes cannabis-based products and spaces. So in that way, Village Center is already protected, at least to the extent that it includes the Palindrome development. I would also offer that Village of Corrales has now adopted an ordinance. They've amended it one more time, and they're going to amend it again, I think last week or this week. So the documents are becoming, these ordinances are becoming living documents. I do see jurisdictions wanting to get something on the books, and then as they become more and more familiar with the territory, they amend. Similar to what you have done now with the film policy, and similar to what you have done with short-term rentals. You're learning to live with it, and then you make your amendments. Your options are wide open. You can add conditions to the retail commercial zone. You can add conditions to the village center zone. You can take the village center zone off the table. Again, those are all policy calls. But Tiffany is absolutely correct. You cannot entirely prohibit a licensee in the village. You have to give them an opportunity in at least one zone to conduct their business. And I think, as I understand it, you'll be in a safe place with that authorization.
Thank you, Attorney Winter. So Trustee Lewis, I think you have a sense from the rest of the trustees where this is. Do you have any further comments?
Mayor,
You-
could I?
Do-
And with
Yes,
Go
Trustee
ahead,
Rael,
Bob.
go
Go
right
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead.
when you say we cannot prohibit totally based on state law, can we prohibit the growth of it and allow the sale of it in retail?
Mayor, trustee, as I understand it, and we're not getting clarity from the state, unfortunately, on some of this. There's 22 separate licenses. And what they're saying is that you cannot prohibit any one of those theoretically, completely.
Except for the consumption.
Except for the consumption and of course the homegrown, and that's already covered. So theoretically, you cannot exclude those 22 licensees except for the consumption and the homegrown in their entirety in the village. And so like most jurisdictions are, again, finding a safe place or a place that they're comfortable with authorizing these activities. And then once authorized, condition them to accommodate the neighborhood and the characteristics of their particular jurisdiction. And I think that's what Tiffany's got crafted right now into both the commercial zone and the VC zone.
Thank you, Attorney Winter. Trustee Rael, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so Trustee Lewis, I wanted to get back to you. So I think you have a sense of where the trustees are. And so I would ask you to continue your line of questions.
I'm not sure. I know that 273 is not in compliance with state law. I know if we passed 282 tonight, we would be in compliance. I guess my question is, and my thought is it better to wait a month and add conditions? And then if somebody wanted to challenge some of our conditions, they were done all at once? Or do we pass 282 and then come back and add amendments and conditions? And somebody can say, well, they could challenge those more because we added them on at a later time. I'm not sure. I'm torn between getting us in some kind of compliance, but not rushing this issue, because I learned so much the other night on you can't limit these licensees, but you can't completely, ban them, but you can limit them in different ways. And as we get to understand, this might be an issue that we amend every month, or we amend every other month for the next year, as the state makes more things clear, and as this whole issue unfolds. And I guess I'm sort of torn there. I mean, just in my limited knowledge, there's a couple little limitations that I would like to put on that I just think makes it just not quite as comfortable as doing business in Bernalillo County or the city of Albuquerque. You know, is that something we all work to add our conditions for next month, or is we just go ahead and pass it tonight, and then with the understanding that next month or in December, we're going to add and do an amendment?
So let me ask Director Justice, because you and I have had this conversation a couple of times within the last 2 weeks. What is the danger, Director Justice and Nan Winter, if we do not act and wait 1 or 2 more months? What is the danger, or is there any danger at all?
Mayor, trustees, I defer to Attorney Winter on this issue primarily. I guess I would say that the current ordinance that we have in place, it sounds like it is in violation of state law, or at least depending on the interpretation and that kind of thing. The question is how fast we think someone would act in the interim, whether somebody would, I guess, act if we act with either us saying that we're not in compliance with state law, or the other way around, we adopt this new ordinance and we add conditions later on, but they started their license process and got licensed or tried to get licensed in the middle of all of this, like before we added these conditions. So I guess I defer to Attorney Winter on this one.
Mayor, trustees, there's a reliance issue. So there could be folks, and I think Tiffany has already been approached by somebody who's interested. And so for that reason, she was, anxious to get something on the books that, avoided the opportunity for somebody to challenge the village on its old ordinance. I think that if you're going to craft conditions, you probably need to do that in as near a term as possible, because again, there's a reliance issue. There will be full retail sale and activity beginning in April of 2022. But in order for somebody to be actively and openly growing or selling or manufacturing on April 1, they're already buying property. They're already financing. They're already thinking about what conditions they need to comply with. So again, what I'm seeing is like Village of Corrales adopted an ordinance similar to what you have in front of you today a couple months back, and they're amending it this week or last week. I forget right now what that is, but so time is of the essence to some extent, because folks are interested in, these cannabis licensees are interested in knowing, what properties available, what conditions are available. So I would say that you probably want to act in the near term. And if you're thinking of additional conditions, if they don't happen this month, I would suggest to you that they need to happen in the next couple of months at the outside.
So thank you, Attorney Winter. So Trustee Lewis, there is public comment on this. I would like to hear that public comment before we ask for either to move the motion forward or to amend the motion. And I hope that's okay with the trustees.
Sure.
Okay, let me start. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this matter? If so, please raise your hand button, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes. Danielle Cedillo Molina, the village clerk, will read comments from a resident at this time. Go ahead, Danielle.
Thank you, Mayor, trustees. I have a couple of comments that I received today, and I'd like to start with the first one. I favor the trustees adopting new business item 12-A ordinance 282. I believe it deals well with matter and is of benefit to the village. The concern of the mayor, the trustees, and their arranging for the October 6th special forum were beneficial. Thank you, Peter Weinreb, 6509 Poza Rica Court Northwest, Los Ranchos. The second one is Mayor Lopez. I have received the revision of number 282. Thank you for listening and for your decision to continue the prohibition of cannabis in zones A1, 2, and 3, and in AC. I am not in favor of homegrown cannabis in residential areas, but I support number 282 as a compromise. Thank you, Mel and Marianne Eves, 721 Chavez Road Northwest, Los Ranchos. Those were the two written comments I received, Mayor.
Okay, therefore, I'm going to move one more time. Is there anyone else from the public on this Zoom call wishing to speak on this matter? If so, please use the raise your hand button. State your name and address. You have 3 minutes. Kiko, is there anyone?
Mayor, trustees, I have 3 people with their hands raised. I'm letting in Miss
Okay, let's
Camille.
start with number 1. So Kiko, who should go first?
Miss Camille has been let in. And
Okay,
I'm
thank
waiting
you.
for her
Camille,
to
go
unmute.
ahead. You have 3 minutes. State your name and address.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
I have audio problems sometimes. Thank you again for allowing me to speak. I'm leaning, I appreciate what Trustee Lewis said about, really taking some more time to consider this whole cannabis production and sales, because I think there's a lot more consideration. I was on that special, I listened to the special meeting, and as I'm here now, and there was no opportunity for a number of residents to comment there. There was no opportunity. And now there's going to be probably very limited amount of people in this, offering this discussion for or against the production or sales of cannabis. I know it's a pressing issue. It was passed in the legislator session, a special session, but we don't necessarily have to move fast. I appreciate Director Justice. I appreciate Attorney Winter's comments, but what is the rush here? Besides, there's other parts to, how about CBD oils with hemp or with approved 0.03 THC. So, and people can get certifications to infuse those tinctures or oils in their homes. That's not even on this ordinance. So I think there's more consideration and take our times. Even if people want to move on this and they want to buy land, we can say we're not there yet. And I would hope that we would do that, especially in the VC areas. There's hotels, there's housing, and how was that a consideration? And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Kiko, who is number 2 of the 3 hands that were raised?
I have Randy and Linda McKee that I'm about to let in.
Thank you. So Randy and Linda, are you on? If so,
Yeah.
please state your name and address. You have 3 minutes.
It's Randy McKee. I live at 749 Chavis Road Northwest here in Los Ranchos. I too support the adoption of this amendment 282, but I do have a couple of concerns. The VC zoning concerns me. There is an awful lot of residential areas right in that immediate area. Also, if you continue with the palindrome effort, I don't think that I would care to see people venturing into our village up to 12 o'clock at night to purchase marijuana, cannabis, in and around our seniors. I think we have to be very, very protective if we're going to take the multifamily dwelling areas and the senior areas into consideration. I do understand the palindrome does exclude it, but there are many pieces of property right in that immediate area that could be built very quickly to support strip malls, things like that, where we could bring cannabis into them. I think we need to actually take a look at the VC zoning as well and prohibit it there so that we don't have to worry about having to figure out how to protect our seniors and our young families as we're trying to put into that palindrome area. So please consider VC as another area that you might want to restrict both sales or anything along that line of the cannabis. So again, thank you very much for considering this. I would like to see us proceed as soon as possible to get AC, A1, A2, and A3 completely protected so that people don't try to plan into this. I do know of a number of people in the area that are looking at this and are going to be filing. So the sooner the better in terms of getting this into place. So thank you for considering this, and I urge you to do this immediately tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. McKee. Who is the third person, Kiko?
Mr. Mayor, I have 2 more people actually now.
That's okay.
I'm Running in Loretta right now.
Until they need it in, Linda. If all he needs to do is file.
Okay, so Loretta, when you're on, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes.
Loretta, you're on. Can you speak? You are muted. We cannot hear you.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. State your name and
Thank you.
address. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Loretta Chavez Smith. I live at 536 Chavez Road Northwest, Los Ranchos. I agree with Trustee Lewis and the hesitancy of the other trustees. I think we need to take just a little bit more time to get all of our ducks in a row to protect, as Randy said, the VC zoning, especially if we're going to be adding all these families. There's property across the street from that. That could be a little small strip mall. So I think we should take a little bit more time to put our conditions in there and have something set in place to protect the other areas. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Loretta. So Kiko, who is the next person?
Does Mr. Eves, we did, Danielle did read a letter from him, but he is also being let in now to speak.
That is fine.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry.
Yeah, please state your name and
Didn't mean to-
address, Mr. Eves.
721 Chavez Road Northwest.
Go ahead.
I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, and your staff for listening to all of us about our concerns about having cannabis in the residential areas. I'm very pleased that you've listened to that. I've already expressed my view on homegrown cannabis. I don't like to see it in residential neighborhoods, but I also understand that the state has instructed that that's going to happen. I think you could fight that, but you may not want to spend your time doing that. If you do decide to do it, I'd be very happy to volunteer because I think a removal of that case to federal court, which is certainly possible, would probably stop the state dead in their tracks. The real reason I wanted to talk is because let's listen to the certain trustees say they wanted to take a little more time. You know, I think it's a good idea. I know that feel like you're under some pressure because the statute says that once you have a license has been granted and once an applicant is located in the village, you can't make them move. So there's a possibility that if you let somebody locate their cannabis business in the village before you pass the ordinance amendments, they could be grandfathered. That's something to be concerned about. However, I think because your current ordinance has broad cannabis prohibitions in it already, I don't think that you're subject to being outmaneuvered by a grandfather type situation because you've already prohibited it. If you leave the current ordinance in place, you I think are protected, and I think you can take some more time. I know some of the municipalities have declared moratoriums. I think your current ordinance works sort of like a moratorium, only better because you had it in place ahead of time and you had very good zoning reasons to do what you did. I certainly don't want to discourage you from locating commercial cannabis operations in certain areas you think are desirable. But I do believe that taking more time is possible for the reasons that I've mentioned. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Eves. I'm gonna say this one more time. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak on this matter? If so, please use the raise your hand button. Kiko?
Mayor, trustees, there are no hands raised.
Thank you. So let me go back to Trustee Pacheco. Would you like to restate your motion or reconsider your motion or not?
Mr. Mayor, can I ask one more question?
Well, absolutely. Go ahead, Trustee Lewis.
My question is for Attorney Winter. Nan, you talked about this issue of reliance. So as Mr. Eves said, so if we pass 282 and somebody applies for their license or gets their license before we add amendments, then their defense is that they're relying on what the code was at that time. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, yes, Mayor, Trustee Lewis. I just trying to keep you insulated from challenges to your ordinance, and the sooner you come up with conditions that licensees can rely on, the more likely you are to be insulated. Now, you know, the risk is who's going to come in. I think as Mr. Eves pointed out, who's going to come in knowing that you currently have a village-wide ban. But that's a risk, you know, so somebody's, and it's something that's confronted Tiffany head on already. She's already had people inquiring. And so, again, the sooner you settle on some conditions, it doesn't mean you can't tweak them down the road later. You know, you could learn the hard way that something's not going to work or something didn't work. But the sooner you get conditions settled, the more insulated you are from being tested by licensees.
And Mayor, trustees, if I could also just interject.
Sure.
One thing specifically, so, you know, Attorney Winter mentioned that April is when retail sale can begin. The state has begun to issue cultivation licenses since the beginning of September. And cultivation is an activity that we explicitly do not allow in any of our zones with our current ordinance. That's the only license type that somebody can get at the state right now. And we do currently prohibit that. So it's I guess if we had to change specific things or make sure to have specific conditions in, the cultivation, I believe, would take a higher priority than retail sale or manufacturing or anything else at this point, because those license types cannot be issued yet, but people can apply for cultivation licenses right now and currently cannot apply for one in Los Ranchos, given that we prohibit cultivation.
Thank you, Tiffany.
And Mayor, just to follow up on that, that is a problem. That is exposing you to a test
Okay,
under the state act, at
thank
least
you.
in cultivation.
Thank you. So let me go back to,
Mayor?
go ahead.
Fred Rosevich,
Fred, go ahead, Fred.
I want to kind of chime in, if I may, just for a second. You know,
Sure.
because this is, with the cannabis thing, I will tell you, law enforcement is experiencing a wide variety of how they're going to enforce things and how they're going to do things. And it's a challenge because it's changing every day. And one of the things that we've discussed, and I think Tiffany has done a great job of putting this ordinance together. And just for the trustees, I don't think you want to get into the legal battle right off the bat. I think it was very clear that you can't strictly prohibit everything when it comes to cannabis. They've got restrictions, and I would just recommend, because things are going to start moving very quickly when these licenses start coming up. If you don't have something in place and somebody starts applying, you're gonna face some issues that it's going to be long and drawn out. I think if you get some of the restrictions in place, again, we tweak ordinances all the time, and then as more restrictions come up or we start seeing things, I think you can then make those amendments. But if you're relying on the fact that we've got an ordinance in place that strictly prohibits anything in the village, I will tell you from being on the other side of those lawsuits, that's not a good place to be. I have to agree with Nan and Tiffany that time is of the essence, at least to get something on the books, and then you can keep. Corrales, I think, has tweaked theirs 4 or 5 times already. I can tell you Rio Rancho, I sit on planning and zoning for Rio, we're tweaking that constantly, and because we don't know all the answers yet, but we want to get something in place, and that's why I think Tiffany and the staff and the attorney said, you know, this is a good start. It's got some restrictions in place that prohibit certain things or restrict them, and then we can tweak it down the road as we need to. But I would caution against just relying on the fact that we're not going to allow any cannabis or any cannabis related activities within the village, because that's clearly a violation of state law and could be a violation of somebody's civil rights. So,
Thank you,
Mayor.
Fred. Okay, let me go back to Trustee Pacheco. You made the motion. Do you want to remove your motion, amend your motion? What do you want to do?
I think I want to discuss some of the conditions.
Go right ahead.
If we can get to a vote tonight. I came up with some thoughts on what I feel would, again, we don't want to use restrict, but that would make it more difficult, I think, for a cannabis manufacturer or grower to come into the village. I'd like to require landscape buffering for anyone that would come into the village and want to set up a greenhouse. I feel that that's critical, and I think it's going to be expensive, so that residents, visitors, anybody in the village cannot see what's happening within those 4 walls. I'd also like to recommend that we put something in place in terms of, I know we have greenhouse guidelines in terms of sizes, those kind of things. I think that we can't really change that, but I think that we could also impose conditions where the tops of the greenhouses are not to be removed. I have found through research that, some of these growers are removing the covers off the greenhouses many months during the year. So I think if we put those kind of restrictions, or whatever we want to call them, visual restrictions, being able to again uncover the greenhouses. Of course, the water approval is big, and then restricting the hours again, I think are conditions that I think would protect us and protect the residents.
So let me follow up. Is that pretty much what you would like to see, Trustee Pacheco?
Yes.
So let me move to Trustee Lewis. Would you like to add anything beyond that for consideration tonight or not?
I had buffering neighborhoods. I really feel like we can reduce hours. I guess I would just, off the top of my head, say, 9 in the morning to 8 at night or something. I think you put a few limitations that just make it a little less comfortable doing business in the village. I do have a concern about how we go about, or do we just remove the village center from consideration? We allow retail sales and we allow, production in other zones, none of the residential zones, but in retail and on the 4th Street corridor or down that gateway, that maybe we just flat remove village center. It's already protected, but I think we just back that up. Is that, again, these are thoughts and you need somebody to sort of tell you, that's okay. You're probably just still setting yourself up if you put that limitation in. But based on what I know today, those would be my limitations.
So Trustee Wright, go ahead. Are you pretty much, is that the essence of your conditions, Trustee Lewis?
Yes.
Okay,
Maybe-
Trustee Rael, do you have anything to add?
So I would like to suggest maybe, I've got a few things here that I would change. I would strike all cannabis activity in the VC zone and limit retail sales to C1, limit cultivation to 10% of owned property, and maximum size of greenhouses to 1,000 square feet, and reduce the hours from 9 to 9. How does that sound to?
Okay, so let me ask Trustee Riccobeni and then we'll get to our expertise on the staff. Trustee Riccobeni, do you have anything you want to add?
I do. I've been listening intently for the last 2 weeks on this, and I want to make a comment that we have our current ordinance in place. This is brand new. And for anybody to think that this is an easy thing for any municipality to go through, they got another thing coming. So we know that everybody's moving and reacting to this. And I would rather respond to it, okay, and not react. And so I like the conditions that I'm hearing right now. I'm just not sure that we're able to, if we're able to bring these conditions into place, go ahead and understand potential challenges to those conditions and craft those accordingly to follow state law. I don't think we're going to do that tonight. Okay, so those conditions are going to have to be added, and then we're going to have to come back and take another look at this. So that's what I see coming. That's my comments, and so I do not think that we should pass 282 unless we're ready to strike some things out of it right now.
So Director Justice, do you have any comment on any of these additional suggestions from the Board of Trustees at this time?
Mayor, trustees, I just want to say a couple things related to some of the conditions that are suggested. So just, I want to circle back to the greenhouse size limitations. Just want to let you know that right now we don't have any size limitations for greenhouses, nothing specific for greenhouses in the village, whether it's residential or commercial property. They're subject to the same restrictions as any other building, whether it's a garage or a house, same setbacks, same height limitations, same amount of limited built square footage for the total property size. So just want to clarify that. And then for some of these restrictions that, well, so specifically for the landscape buffer or buffering neighborhoods, my main question is whether or not that applies to new undeveloped properties or whether that would apply to somebody who's leasing in a space on a currently developed property, and whether that developed property now needs to add a landscape buffer or a screening buffer fence of any kind. Just because the reason why I ask for that clarification is because right now new development is required to have a landscape buffer between commercially zoned properties and residentially zoned properties, no matter what that use is, of 15 feet. And so that's already a requirement for any development. And so the landscape buffer would apply then potentially to properties that are already developed. And I guess that might be a little bit challenging for properties to come into compliance in that manner. But that also might not necessarily be something that we have to accommodate.
Anything else, Director Justice?
I would, I guess, if there are this number of additions to make to the ordinance, then it may make sense to postpone approval of this to next month and get these changes in writing. That way we're not making verbal floor amendments for something like this.
And I agree with you on that. So with that being said, Trustee Pacheco, how would you like to proceed with your motion?
I will amend my motion to defer the approval of the ordinance 282 to our next meeting in November 2021.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, I'm going to call for the question. Call for the roll call vote. Trustee Rael.
Yes.
Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Riccobeni.
Yes.
Thank you. We're going to move to item B now. Discussion and approval to adopt ordinance number 283, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of the Village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque, New Mexico, general obligation refunding bonds, series 2021. We have three individuals to make presentations or to speak. Mr. Eric Harrigan, Mr. Chris Muirhead, and Administrator Simon. Eric Harrigan, please proceed.
Great, thank you, mayors and trustees. Eric Harrigan with RBC Capital Markets. Hopefully you can hear me. I will try to keep my comments here fairly brief. I have been losing, service, so hopefully I'll get through this. But I am going to share my screen here with you very quickly. So last week, the city priced its refunding bonds. I do just want to note that there is a typo. The sale date was last week, October 4th. The closing date is scheduled for November 19th. The savings that were achieved through the refunding, the average rate on the refunding bonds was 4.5%. The rate on the new money bonds was just over 0.5%, which generated in total 172,000 of present value savings, or a little over 9% on a present value basis. This translates to approximately $30,000 in annual savings to the village through the refunding, through those lower interest rates. We have a couple of slides on the general interest rates and the term of the bonds. I do want to note that the final maturity of the bonds is the same as the 2007 bonds. There was no extension of the debt, keeping the debt the same, just taking advantage of the lower interest rate market. Just from a market update, I'm going to skip a couple of these pages and just kind of go to this slide here, which shows what interest rates have done over the last year, as well as over the last 10 years. While interest rates have jumped up quite a bit over the last week or so, we were pretty conservative on our interest rate assumptions when we started down this path, and we were able to achieve slightly higher results than we were originally anticipating when I first visited with the village trustees about this refunding. Again, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the refunding. And I know that Chris Muirhead with the Module Law Firm is also on the call to address any questions about the ordinance. But with that, I'd be happy to pause and answer any questions.
Okay, let me move to Chris and then Administrator Simon, then we'll go through Robert's rules and ask for a motion in a second. Then we'll open it up for questions. Chris, do you have anything to say at this time?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief. Mayor, members of the trustees, members of the board. The ordinance in front of you just kind of encapsulates what Eric had indicated. It authorizes a debt with the New Mexico Finance Authority in the amount of $1.9 million. It keeps the pledge the same as the 2007 bonds. It is a GO-backed security. A simple majority of the vote tonight passes it. No need for a public vote, which there would have been in 2007 since it's a refunding and not new money. On page 5 of the ordinance, you see memorialized what Eric talked about in terms of the new maturities and the extremely low interest rates ranging from 0.16 to 0.77. And it does not extend the maturities as from the 2007 bonds. So in short, it just authorizes entering into this transactions with the Finance Authority and capturing these savings at these lower interest rates.
Thank you, Chris. Administrator Simon, do you have anything to add at this time?
Thank you, Mayor and trustees. I just want to say that I think we've been very well advised by Mr. Harrigan from RBC, and appreciate Mr. Muirhead stepping in as our bond counsel. And you can see that we are going to see tremendous savings to the village of Los Ranchos. And that is in large part because of the direction we got from you all, the Board of Trustees, earlier in the year. So thank you.
Thank you. So before we get to discussion and questions, I do need a motion.
I make a motion to approve.
I need a second. Thank you. Okay, let's move to discussion from the governing body, trustee by trustee. Trustee Rael.
I don't have any questions.
Trustee Lewis.
I just want to make sure I understand one point. If I go back and look at our maturity on our other bonds, so we're saving on interest, but we will have the first couple of years, 40 or so $1,000 more in principal payments starting next year. I think we were at like 260 was going to be our payment for next year, and now it's going to be 315. So I just want to make sure I understand that our debt service, our pro rata share of the principal is going to be higher initially. Is that right?
So, Mayor, if you will, Trustee Lewis, so that is correct. The principal payments are higher, but that's because the interest is so much lower than it was. The financing was designed to generate level savings so that the village will realize roughly $30,000 a year in annual savings. So it does actually accelerate the debt a little bit, but it doesn't increase the annual debt service payments that the village is currently making. It's your interest, the annual interest goes from, so for example, in August 1 of 2022, your interest is about $80,000. Your interest under the refunding
is now about $9,000. So the principal components got adjusted to account for that change in interest. So.
Okay, thank you.
you
I
will
just wanted to make
notice-
sure I understood that, and
Mhm.
I think this deal looks awesome. Thank you.
Okay, trustee Pacheco,
I don't have any questions at this time.
trustee Riccobeni.
No questions, Mayor.
Okay, I need to ask, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this matter? If so, please use the raise your hand button.
Mayor, there are no hands raised.
Thank you. I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Rael,
Yes.
trustee Lewis,
Yes.
trustee Pacheco,
Yes.
trustee Riccobeni.
Yes.
Thank you. Let's move to item C. Discussion and approval of resolution number 2021-10-01. Participation in State of New Mexico Department of Transportation Fund 89200 Capital Appropriation Project. Ms. Rinaldi and then Administrator Simon. Maria?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and trustees, what you have in front of you simply authorizes the mayor to enter into the grant agreement in the amount of $250,000 for the scope of plan, design, and construct to continue roadway improvements on 4th Street from Pueblo Solano to the village limits. This is the appropriation we received in this year's legislative session. They're now requesting and requiring resolutions in order to enter into the agreement.
Thank you, Ms. Rinaldi. Administrator Simon, do you have anything further to add?
Nothing further, Mayor.
Thank you. Before we get to any questions or discussion, I need a motion.
I make a motion to approve resolution 2021-10-01.
I need a second.
Second.
Okay. Now, is there any discussion or questions from the governing body? Let me move trustee by trustee. Trustee Rael,
No.
trustee Lewis,
No, not at this time.
trustee Pacheco,
No.
trustee Riccobeni.
No.
Therefore, I must ask, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this matter? If so, please use the raise your hand button.
Mayor, there are no hands raised.
I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Rael,
Yes.
trustee Lewis,
Yes.
trustee Pacheco,
Yes.
trustee Riccobeni.
Yes.
I'm going to move to item D, discussion and approval of resolution number 2021-10-02. Participation in Transportation Project Fund Program administered by the New Mexico Department of Transportation. Ms. Rinaldi and Ms. Simon. Ms. Rinaldi, please present.
Mayor, trustees, this is similar to the previous resolution. This resolution authorizes the mayor to enter into an agreement for a total project cost of $750,000 and commits us to a 5% share of that, or $37,500, for a scope of engineering final design for phase 2. We call it phase 2, from Pueblo Solano to the village limits. This is the application I submitted on behalf of Los Ranchos, that we were funded in excess of our request, and this authorizes that project to move forward.
Thank you, Ms. Rinaldi. Administrator Simon, do you have anything further to add?
Nothing further right now, Mayor.
Thank you. So before we get to discussion and questions from the governing body, I need a motion.
I
Move to
move
approve.
I need
Resolution
a
number.
second. Thank you. Are there any questions from the governing body? I'll go trustee by trustee. Trustee Rael,
Oh,
trustee Lewis,
No.
trustee Pacheco,
No.
trustee Riccobeni.
No.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I need to ask, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this matter? If so, please use the raise your hand button.
Mayor, trustees, there are no hands raised.
I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Rael,
yes.
trustee Lewis,
Yes.
trustee Pacheco,
Yes.
trustee Riccobeni,
Yes.
Thank you. Item E, in accordance with the Village of Los Ranchos 2013 codified ordinances, Chapter 9, Section 9.2.2, Planning and Zoning Commission. A, membership of the commission shall consist of 7 members who shall be appointed by the mayor with the advice and consent of the members of the governing body. Miss Connie Barrow, Director Justice.
Mayor, trustees, you have her letter of interest and resume included in the packet. We interviewed her for being a potential planning and zoning commissioner, and think that she would be a good addition to the commission. She values the semi-rural character of the village, and she has technical understanding, as you can see from her professional background, that would be beneficial. And I stand for any questions.
Okay, before we get to questions, I'm going to ask for a motion.
I move approval.
Second, need a second.
I second.
Are there any questions from the governing body? Let me go by trustee. Trustee Rael,
No,
trustee Lewis,
I was just, what position is she filling?
Director Justice, do you know?
Mayor, trustees, trustee Lewis. So we had 2 commissioners recently leave the commission, Diane Albert and Rachel Berenson. We appointed Shalene Smith to fill one of those roles, and Connie Barrow would fill one of those other roles. So either or Diane Albert or Rachel Berenson.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, trustee Pacheco,
I'm sorry, what were we?
do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, trustee Riccobini.
No question.
Okay, let me ask, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this matter? If so, please use the raise your hand button.
Mayor, trustees, there is one hand raised, stand by.
Okay, you please state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes when you are on.
Hello?
Yes, go
Hi.
ahead, state your name and address.
Yes, this is Loretta Chavez Smith, 536 Chavez Road, Village of Los Ranchos.
Go ahead.
I just had one question, Mr. Mayor, and how many people applied for this position to be on the planning and zoning?
One person, Connie Barrow.
Is there a formal application that needs to be filled out for this
No,
position?
no, there is not.
Okay, so you're telling me that there was only one person that applied for this position?
That's correct.
Okay, was it ever posted anywhere that this position was open?
No, it's not a position that you post unless you don't have anybody who's interested. Individuals who want to be on the Planning and Zoning Commission, when there is a vacancy, they need to come to see the mayor. And then the mayor asks for advice and consent from the Board of Trustees. That has been the prerogative of the mayor for as long as I have been elected official in the Village of Los Ranchos.
Well, thank you. I just needed to understand what the process was about electing a planning and zoning commissioner. Okay, I thank you very much for answering my question. You guys have a good evening.
You're welcome. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak on this matter? If so, please use the raise your hand button.
There are no more hands raised.
I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Rael,
yes,
trustee Lewis,
Yes.
trustee Pacheco,
Yes,
trustee Riccobini.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. Item 13 is trustee informal discussion. Roundtable discussion is informal. The Board of Trustees will take no official vote or other official action. Trustee Rael.
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Okay, trustee Lewis.
I just have one item in this week when I had the opportunity to look at the plans moving forward for the Agri Nature Center. I really don't understand the Schulte House. It doesn't seem to have merit in my opinion. I know there's some people that really think it does. And I guess my feeling is I can't see spending a taxpayer money to move it, spend some $50,000 plus to abate the asbestos, put it on a pad, bring it up to code. I just don't see that as a practical move for the village. And so I would really like us to, the people that feel strongly about the Schulte House, I would really like to see us maybe give them a timetable to find a home for it and get it moved. I just don't see that it's in the best interest of the village to continue to address possibly moving it, which is still going to be extremely expensive, and just dealing with it. So that's my comment tonight.
Thank you, trustee Lewis. Trustee Pacheco.
I do have a few things. First of all, it's come to my attention that the crosswalk on 4th Street, close to Kelly Joe's place, traffic is not stopping. I've heard this from multiple residents and people that are visiting her place and other places. I don't know if there's anything we can do that will, I don't know, bring up the flashing lights. Maria, I don't know if you have any recommendations. It just seems that that's been a problem.
Maria, you and I talked
Mayor?
about this a while back. Go ahead. You might be able to shed some light on this.
Thank you, Mayor. Trustee Pacheco, yes, we are simply waiting to close out the first phase to free up our money after all of our change orders. All of our money at this moment in that funding phase for construction is tied into the Bradbury construction contract. Until we release that contract, we don't have the funds, but we have already cost estimated and installation cost hawk signals, the overhead signals that flash as well on the signage. Those will be installed and paid for with this money. They're quite expensive. I cannot remember, maybe the mayor remembers the cost estimate we have, but it's thousands of dollars, and it's an allowable expense under this money. As you probably understand now from the resolutions that I just explained, that money is dedicated north of Pueblo Solano, unfortunately, and cannot be used. But I assure you, that is an issue we're very well aware of, have a solution as soon as we have this phase closed out. And you'll know from my correspondence with you and what you saw on the ground in phase 1 this week, we finished the ADA improvements in the promenades and are moving rapidly now to the other punch list items. So I assure you that as soon as we release Bradbury contract and have that money available, that is the next improvement.
Thank you, Maria. Appreciate it.
Anything else, trustee Pacheco?
I do.
Go ahead.
The light at Ranchitos and 4th Street, another one that residents have complained about is it doesn't seem to be synchronized. It just turns red for, when there's no oncoming traffic. Is there a way to adjust that?
I've heard this before. Administrator Simon, is that something that you could get keen to look at?
Yes, Mayor and Trustee Pacheco, we will look into that.
Thank you very much.
Anything else?
Last thing is I just wanted to mention that I attended the Maui event in Santa Fe last month. And I would just like to tell my fellow trustees that it was just so informational, important information that I feel like we as trustees are required to have, should have, and that we owe the residents to have. I would recommend this particular event to any other trustee. It was just eye-opening for me. And so I just wanted to mention that as well. That's all
I totally concur, trustee Pacheco. When I went through it, I learned so much. Anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
Trustee Riccabini.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Just one that keeps on coming up. I keep on hearing people are unaware at times about what might be going on, and I still think that an event sign would be appropriate out in front of at least Village Hall, if not the Agri Nature Center, as well as on 4th Street someplace. Just to, kind of keeping the eye and keeping the mind about what's happening in our villages. I think it's very positive. So I'd like to consider that.
Thank you, trustee Riccobeni. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, the meeting is adjourned at 9:32 PM. I need a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank
Aye.
you. Wonderful meeting. I appreciate it.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.